have surgery, but I'm happy about the fact of what's going to happen after surgery. I'm happy about the fact that I'm going to come out of this better. I'm going to come out of this with no more pain. I'm going to come out of this with this structure or this bone or this area fixed. That I'm going to have this change that's going to occur. I'm not happy about the circumstance necessarily, but I find joy in what the reason that I'm going through this. I'm going through this surgery to make this better. What if we took that same mentality, that same concept, and we applied it to our everyday struggles in life? Yes, I'm not happy about the fact that I have to go through this necessarily, but I know that going through this is going to make this part of my life better. I know going through this, I'm going to be stronger. I know going through this, God's going to use it to teach me something. I know going through this, I'm going to be able to help somebody else. I know going through this, my life will be better. I know going through this, that my relationship with Christ, if I use it appropriately, will be stronger and better. What if we went through struggles like that? The same mentality as if you go through surgery. A lot of us sitting here has already been through surgery at least once or twice in your life. When you went through the surgery, it's not what you thought. If you thought your life was going to be worse going through surgery, would you go through it? No. You go through it. You go through that time of trials. You go through that time of pain. You go through that time of fear because you hope, you pray, you think, you believe that you're going to come out better by doing it. Do you not? So that's what James is talking about. It's like, look, I know the trials suck. He's not being stupid. James ain't like, I don't know what life's all about. He's like, look, I know this sucks, but find it joy because you know what's coming out of it. How many of us will actually look at our trials and tribulations and our struggles with that mindset of, I know what's coming out of this? Nobody's raising their hand. Why? Because we don't think that way, do we? But doesn't it make sense that we should think that way? Don't it? Look, I know if I get through this, I know life will be better. I know that God will use this for something if I just focus on this. See, God will give us opportunities to develop patience. There's 4 kinds of opportunities that God gives us. And when you hear these things, you're going to be like, those are not good opportunities, but they're reality. The first thing that God gives us as an opportunity is He gives us interruptions. Anybody have any interruptions in their life? Anybody have things not going the way that they had planned them to be? Do you know what I've realized? That one of the biggest interruptions, and I'm going to tell you this, and I know some of you are going to be like, oh, that's not true, but it is true. One of the things that interrupts your life the most is children. Huh? Oh, people are like, I love my children. They didn't interrupt my life. Yes, they do. How many mothers have went to the toilet and couldn't even poop without their kids trying to knock on the door or standing there beside them? That's an interruption, right? Come on. Be honest with you. You can't even go to the bathroom without your kid knocking on the door or walking in the room. That's an interruption in life. How many times you've had a conversation and your kids are standing there pulling on your pants going, hey, I want this, I want that. And you have to say, look, I'm talking, shut up. That's an interruption. Children interrupt. I think God gave us children for that reason, to teach us patience. You know, I celebrate my kids' birthdays not because of the fact they were born on that day, it's the fact that they lived another year, that none of us killed them. Congratulations, you survived another year in our house. Yeah, that's celebrating me. I'm talking about the children right now. But look, there was this situation. The disciples knew what it was all about. Look at Matthew 19, verse 13 and 14. He says, Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. The disciples are like, get those kids out of here. We're busy. The kids are interrupting what we're doing here right now. Get the kids out of here. See, a lot of people don't agree with me when I say, hey, the kids need to be down here during fellowship time. A lot of pastors don't agree with that. A lot of pastors don't agree when I say, hey, the kids need to be here in service during preaching time. If I had my druthers, all the children would be down here right now. I don't talk about anything that isn't real life. I don't talk about anything that your elementary student wouldn't hear, wouldn't see, wouldn't be part of. That's how I'd rather have it. But I know for some of you, some of the children, especially the younger ones, are a distraction, so you don't get to hear the message as well. But I'll tell you, when I grew up, I sat next to my grandma and grandpa, and I didn't move. And it wasn't because of the Holy Spirit. It's because of the holy grandma hand that would smack upside my head. There was many times that I visited the ladies' bathroom, and it wasn't because I wanted to. That's just the truth. But we move the kids out. Why? Because they're an interruption. They interfere with your listening. It interferes with your time. For some parents, it's the only break I get. I come to church just because I can have a minute by myself without children. But see, here's the same principle. They were coming to talk to Jesus. They were coming to meet Jesus. And the disciples were like, that's an interruption. That's bothering us. That's slowing us down from what we're doing, from the task we're doing. Get them out of here. Send them upstairs to Sunday school. They don't need to be down here with us. They don't need to be bothering us. But listen here. Jesus said to them, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. See, the interruption that we have, Crystal and I were talking about this. We've got our oldest that's graduated college, living on her own. We got our second child that is visiting colleges now. You might have seen on Facebook. We were at one the other day. And we were talking about it this morning. And it was like, yeah, it won't be long. My oldest daughter, she comes home periodically, but I don't see her every day. I don't get to yell at her every day for not picking up her clothes or for not throwing her dishes away. And I will tell you, go to my daughter's house, it's spotless. I don't know what happened to my true daughter, because that was not the daughter that lived at our house. I will tell you right now. You go to her house and I'm like, where am I? Because this is not my daughter. Her room, literally, you would have to get a permit and injections before you walked into it when she lived at our house. She literally would leave stuff behind because she just figured, hey, Crystal will pick it up, so I'll just leave it there for her. And Crystal would pick it up. But I go to her house, and she's complaining. She has a roommate, and she complains that she won't clean up after herself. And I'm like, this is awesome. Now you know how I felt. She's like, this ain't right. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And she pays half the rent. You didn't even pay half the rent. So, kids, what you're doing to your mom and dad is going to come back and bite you. I promise you. Promise you. The other one's like, oh, yeah, well, she didn't like living here either. Look at how she lives now. She learned a lot from me yelling at her every day. Every day. 2-3 times a day sometimes. But now she's the way she is. Her house looks nice. She complains when people mess it up. I learned a lot of patience from her. But like God said, one day it's going to be gone. One day she's up there by herself. She's not at home making a mess anymore. Not saying that I wish she'd come home and make a mess again, but I do miss her coming home. And every now and then she'll come home, and you know what she'll do? She'll make a mess, and she'll leave. And I'm like, there's my girl. Because Mama's upset. Because she went up there and made a mess. We got to go clean it. Last time she cleaned up off after herself, couldn't even tell she was there. It was such a sad moment. She's growing up so quickly. But God's like, yeah, the kids will be an interruption. There are problems. He gives us these situations. He gives us these children. He gives us these things to say, hey, are you going to let that hinder you? Or are you going to use it to learn patience? Are you going to teach them things through these circumstances? Or are you going to let it hinder you? So the first thing that he gives us is the interruptions, which are the children. The second thing he gives us is inconveniences. Anybody have any inconveniences in life? No? Who don't have any? Do you know what one of the biggest inconvenience in life is? You guys. People. People are our biggest inconvenience, right? Who causes you the most inconvenience? Other people. Other people. They put you in situations, they do things. The number one complaint of society is people. People not fulfilling their share of the work. Anybody complain about that? At my house, that's all I know. I can tell you that no matter which child I ask about something, they can't tell me about themselves, but they can tell me what every other child in my house did or didn't do. Why didn't you clean the dishes? Well, so-and-so didn't do this and so-and-so didn't do that. I didn't ask you about that. I asked you about what you did. Well, but what about so-and-so? I asked you about you. Do you guys do that to God? Oh, why don't you pray more? Well, so-and-so don't even pray at all, God. Oh, okay. Well, now that you brought that to my attention, because I didn't know so-and-so didn't pray, I'll go deal with him, and you're okay, because you didn't pray much. Why don't you go to church? Well, so-and-so don't even go to church at all. How come you don't do this? Well, so-and-so doesn't do that. Well, at least I'm better than so-and-so. I show up to church. Is that what we do? We compare ourselves all the time, and we say all the time we're inconvenienced by other people. I just told you about my inconvenience of driving to Charleston, and it's other people that get in my way of where I need to go. It's inconvenient for me that they're on the road that I should be on by myself without having to deal with them. If you look at Luke chapter 10, verse 40, he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him, which is Jesus, and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Now, for those of us that have more than one child, I hear that all the time. Well, so-and-so ain't doing nothing. Make her come help me. Alice has this thing about the bathroom. And she'll constantly come up to us. I clean my part, but the other two won't clean their part of the bathroom, and it sucks down there. It's nasty. I'm like, okay. Well, do something about it. It's nasty. I was like, I don't go down there. I don't really care. I refuse to go down there. That hole down there needs to just have a bomb and be done with it. I don't know how they live down there. They're animals. Our dogs won't even go down there, and I'm not lying. Our dogs will not go down there. Am I lying? No. Our dogs won't. They'll go like, no, I ain't going down there. We'll leave the door open. They'll walk over to the steps and look down and go, mm-mm. They won't do it. They won't even go down there. It's how nasty it is. But Ellis is quick to tell me what everybody else hadn't done. And I cleaned my part of the bathroom, but so-and-so won't clean their part. And we'd be like, okay, everybody go clean their part. Okay. Ellis come back. They didn't do it. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And the rest of them go, it's not that bad. We've named that fungus over there Howard. And we named that mold over there Tony. It's fine. It's fine. Alice goes, it's nasty. I'm like, I'm sorry. But we have these same complaints that Mary had, Martha had about Mary. I've got all this stuff going on. Nobody else is helping me. Why ain't anybody doing their share of the work? You know how quick and easy it is to do that here at the church? To say, well, so-and-so's doing something, but why ain't so-and-so doing something? You know, why are you even talking to so-and-so? They don't even do anything but show up. And she went to God and said, hey, look, I'm doing all the work. Do something about it. You got to learn patience. You got to wait for God to do something, to move them. And if you know the rest of the story, God said, hey, look, it's better that she's spending time with me than worrying about all that. The third thing, we have interruptions, inconveniences, and then we have irritations. Oh, who said that? Oh, she's got one. Which one of you are it today? One of you's it today. She jumped right on that. One of you's it. Which one of you is the sandpaper? Yeah, well. So obviously she knows irritations, the little things that bug us the most. The little things that bug us the most. Look over with me in Numbers. And I love this story. You may have heard it before or may not. This is a story of Moses, and they're in the wilderness, and they've been there for 40 days and 40 nights, or 40 years. Not yet, but that's part of what the story is. And he says, he and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of a rock. They were complaining. They wanted something to drink. They didn't have any water. They wanted some water. So Moses, prays to God, and God tells him what to do to get some water. All these people are whining and complaining. Whining and complaining. Anybody here know what whining and complaining is? Is it because you do it or because you think somebody else does it? Okay. So these people are whining and they're complaining to Moses. You brought us out here to die. There's no water. We're dying of thirst. What's wrong with you, Moses? Moses is like, look, I didn't even want to bring you people. God made me do it. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that's kind of the attitude you're getting from Moses, okay? I didn't even want to come visit you. I had my wife, my sheep. I had everything perfect. I had left that whole land back there. I was done with that country. I didn't want anything to do with this. But God told me through a burning bush that I had to do this, and I'm doing it. So now they're whining, they're complaining, they want water. So Moses and Aaron, they gathered assembly together. They brought the people together in front of a rock. And Moses said to them, listen, you rebels. There went the nice Moses. Must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Now, if you keep reading, you find out that God ain't very happy with Moses because he didn't do what he told him to do. He didn't tell him to do it the way he wanted him to do it. But see, Moses was trying to learn and needed to learn, and he did learn as we read more about Moses throughout. He finally figured this whole patience thing out. But the people drove Moses crazy. That's why when people talk to me about wanting to be a pastor, I'm like, why would you want to be a pastor? People will drive you crazy. Sean sent me a meme the other day of this one guy. He looks kind of normal, and then another guy, it's the same guy, but he's aged like 60 years, and he says this is the first 5 years in ministry. Some of you aren't laughing. Is that because you can relate? Am I starting to look that bad already? Okay. But the point is that you deal with people. You make yourself susceptible. Moses became susceptible to all these people and trying to help them meet their needs and being responsible for shepherding them and leading them, and it drove him crazy. But that's how God used that circumstance to teach him patience. I love it. There's a lot of times, and some of you have seen it probably, there's the comedians that'll do stuff and something will happen. I've seen a sitcom, and I can't remember what it was, and he'll say, Lord, give me patience. When they're dealing with somebody that's not doing things right, they're not saying things right, they're not acting right. And see, every day, some of us need to be praying that prayer, whether it's you're driving down the road like me, and somebody in a car that's marked with some business goes and tries to cut you off and swerves in front of you doing 90 miles an hour, and you're trying to just drive, and you're like, Lord, just give me patience, because right now, if I carried my gun, I'd probably pull it out, if for no other reason, just to scare them to death, but I probably would pull the trigger. Because of all the irritation that people, when I show up to doctor's offices and they're already behind, and then the receptionist decides not to be nice about the fact that they're behind. She's got an attitude that irritates me. I'm like, you are a reflection of what's happening in the back. I tell people behind all the time about certain offices, I'm like, the doctors are really good at what they do, and they're really nice, but their staff really sucks. Their staff is awful, but he does a good job, and that's why we keep coming here. But his staff is hard to work with. They're hard to talk to. They don't give us what we need. They make things harder. And I'll tell the doctors, hey, this is the problem. This is slowing things down. But people will irritate you. These people were irritating Moses, and instead of learning patience with that irritation, Moses chose to sin by disobeying God. And a lot of times that's what we do. We get irritated with each other. We get irritated with people in the church. And instead of learning patience the way God wants us to, we use it to separate us from the family that God has put us in. We use it to keep us from worshiping God because we focus so much on the anger than we do on focusing on the relationship with God, which is the whole intention of being at church. You see, Moses had to learn that. And this was the circumstance, this was the time, the opportunity that God gave him to learn that was through this time. The last thing that God does on his part is inactivity. He gives us inactivity. Nothing happens. Nothing's moving. Nothing's going the way you want it to. If you look at Job 14, verse 14, it says, if someone dies, will they live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come. See, Job is saying, remember we talked about Job a couple of weeks ago, about how Job had all these issues that was going on. The devil had challenged God and said, look, I can make Job denounce you. I can make Job hate you. And he was like, sure, I'll take that bet. Paraphrasing. And Job's like, hey, I'm not doing anything. I can't do anything. I've lost everything. I'm sick. And he says, look, I'm just going to sit here and wait on God. I'll be patient. People used to say all the time, I wish I had the patience of Job. Why? Because Job had no other choice but to wait for this to be over. To me, impatience is hard. Inactivity is hard. Nothing's happening. I want something to happen. I need something to be working towards. I need a goal. I need some process. I need something. But sometimes God gives us nothing to teach us to be patient and learn to wait on Him. Some of you were shaking your head. You're just like me. You're like, I can't stand for nothing to be going on. I can't stand for no answer. Just this pause. It's like watching a video and someone pushed a pause on your life and you're just like, what's happened here? Nothing's happening. And then someone passes fast forward and you're like, whoa, slow down. I like to pause. See, God gives us those pauses in our lives, that time of inactivity, and it's our responsibility to learn patience through that. Going, okay, God, I know it's in your timing. I know I just need to wait on you. And I know that this will come. You know, one thing I've learned as I looked at this is patience carries a lot of weight. W-A-I-T. Patient carries a lot of weight. Nobody got it. Chris got it. The rest of you will get it tomorrow. Just write it down. W-A-I-T. Patient carries a lot of weight. There's a lot of waiting in patience. That's why we don't like it. That's why we don't like it. So I told you what God's part is. He provides the circumstances. He gives us interruptions, inconveniences, irritations, inactivities. But then I told you there's going to be another section, which is my part. What is my part? My part is how I respond. And I have to respond positively to the circumstances. How do we do that? How do you respond positively to the circumstances? Some of us really struggle with that. The first thing we got to discover the bigger perspective. We got to discover the bigger perspective. Look at Proverbs chapter 19, verse 11. It says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is not to one's glory to overlook an offense. 19:11. Mm-mm. 14:29 will be next. Oh. He's got it. How'd you get it? Okay. So a man's wisdom gives him patience as to his glory to overlook an offense. A man's wisdom, a woman's wisdom, a child's wisdom yields what? Patience. Patience. Have you ever, how would you, seriously, think about this for a moment. How would you define someone of wisdom? Someone who quickly responds to a situation, someone that quickly wants to retaliate on a problem, someone that quickly has a solution to a problem, or someone who says, let's just see what's going to happen here. Let's watch this through. Let's wait. Let's pray about it. Let's see what God wants to do. Which one are you considered wise? Huh? The last one. Some of you are like, I don't know. They're both stupid to me. No. But we look at people. People make fun of the president all the time right now about how he does things. And one thing I will say, like it or not, I have learned about him is his patience. You know, this country does something to us. He takes time to think about it, mull it over, talk about it, process it, decide what the next step's going to be. Sometimes he doesn't do anything. Like, oh, it's a sign of weakness. But what is God telling us that's a sign of? Wisdom. It's wisdom. Let me process this. Let me think this through. Let me look at the whole picture. What's going to be the outcome of this response? What's going to happen? See, that's just it. Patience requires us to think about what's going to happen next. But in response to a situation, we don't care what's going to happen next. We don't think about the retaliation. We don't think about the next step. We don't think about what their response is going to be. All we think about is, I got to get even. I got to do this. I got to do that to this situation. But see, patience is what gives us wisdom, and wisdom is what gives us patience. They go together. You can't have wisdom and not have patience. And I've never met someone with patience that didn't have wisdom. They have to go together. They have to go together. So we got to be able to look at the bigger perspective. We got to be able to look at it and say, okay, God, what is it you're trying to show me? What is it that you want me to see? Proverbs 14:29, it says, whoever is patient has great, what? Understanding. But one who is quick-tempered displays folly. What's folly? It's a beach, right? Foolishness. Foolishness. How many of us have been foolish in the past 2 weeks? Come on, don't be liars. You're in church. None of you responded foolishly. You responded without thinking about the outcome, without thinking about what's going to happen next. This is what happened. This is what I did. That's just the way it is. We do it with our kids all the time. Well, so-and-so looked at me. Well, why'd you hit them? Because they looked at me funny. You didn't think about the consequences of what's going to happen to you now because you hit them. Why are you mad at me? They looked at me funny first. Okay. And we don't think about it. We respond instead of saying, oh, wait a minute. If I go tell on them instead of responding to them, they'll get in trouble and I won't. Any of you guys have that situation as a kid or deal with your kids that way? And you try to explain it to them all the time. It's like, look, why did you do that? Why didn't you just tell me that they did that? Now they would be in trouble and not you. Because you went over and beyond. Your response wasn't equal to what happened. So now you're in trouble too. Well, because I responded to what they did. But if you would have had patience and knowing that this will get taken care of, you wouldn't be in trouble right now. See, we just don't want to do that. We don't want to have patience. We don't look at the bigger perspective. We don't want to see what is going to happen. Kind of the saying is, you can't beat it, can't flee through it, then go with it. If you can't beat it, you can't run from it, then go with it. So we got to discover a bigger perspective. We got to develop a sense of humor. Sometimes you just got to laugh. Sometimes you just got to laugh. Do you know that a 4-year-old laughs about 400 times a day? We all need more 4-year-olds in our life. Not acting like 4-year-olds, actual 4-year-olds in our life. 400 times a day. You know how often a 50-year-old laughs a day? 15. 15 times a day. Some of us don't even laugh that much. When I read that, I was like, this sucks. I need a 4-year-old to come around so I can laugh more. Because you can't help but laugh when a 4-year-old laughs. Don't tell me if you got a cold heart if a 4-year-old starts laughing and it don't make you laugh. They could be completely wrong. You can want to beat them to death, and they start laughing, and you cannot help it. You got to laugh with them. You can be so mad that you can't even see straight, and a 4-year-old starts laughing about something, and all of a sudden you got snot running out of your nose. You're laughing so hard. But for some reason, at the age 50, we decide we can't laugh anymore. Life ain't funny. I like to make myself laugh. I do it a lot. For some reason, it's bedtime when my wife's trying to go to sleep. That's the funniest time to me ever. And then she'll get laughing and the whole bed shakes like the old vibrating beds where you put the quarter in, and then it makes me laugh even more. You just didn't go to the right hotels. But you got to laugh. Laugh makes you feel better. Makes things make more sense to you. You got to develop a sense of humor. If you laugh at things, you can't respond out of anger, can you? It's hard to be angry and laugh at the same time. It really is. Try it. I'm mad at you. And then all of a sudden you start cracking and you're laughing and you're like, this sucks. Don't make me laugh. You ever had someone, don't make me laugh. I'm mad at you. Crystal used to say it to me all the time. I'm mad at you. If she would ever say she's mad at me, it'd always make me laugh. Because you don't announce that you're mad at somebody. You can tell when they're mad at you, right? They don't got to tell you. She was like, I'm mad at you. And then I'd start laughing. And she'd start like, don't make me laugh. I'm mad at you. And then by golly, I'm on now. Challenge is met. I'm coming after you. I'm going to make you laugh. Because then you forget you're mad at me. And you won't kill me. Guys, I'm giving you a little piece of advice. Make them laugh. If they got a gun, don't worry about it. Just run. But when they put it down, then come back and make them laugh. I'm trying to help you guys. Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Some of you need to circle that verse and remember it. Because some of us have suffered with that. In Celebrate Recovery, we hear that all the time. That was so weird. You got, some of you need to be up here to see what I just saw. I'm just telling you, that was like, I was like, I didn't know they made those. You don't know what I'm talking about, but she does. And I'm like, I didn't know they made those. And then never mind. I guess. But think about it. How many of us, in Celebrate Recovery, we talk about this all the time, about the heart and how the heart gets so hardened that we just lose all of our joy. We lose our peace. We lose our happiness. We can't laugh because we're so miserable. And that's what this says. It says a heart at peace gives the life body, gives you vibrance. You can see life in somebody. You ever see somebody and they say, oh, there's just so much life in that person. What do you see when you see someone that has life in them? They're not walking around with a frown, are they? They're not walking around wanting to kill somebody. You see what? Their eyes are brightened up. Why are their eyes so bright? Because they're happy. You see a relaxed look on their face. I think that's why all the comedians live for so long, because all they're doing is laughing at each other and laughing constantly. We got to learn to be happy. We got to learn to be able to say, you know what, God, it is fine. No matter what happens, I can find humor in what's going on. If you look at Psalms chapter 2, verse 4, it says, the one enthroned in heaven laughs. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. Now, I'm pretty sure he's laughing at you, not with you. Because some of the things you do, you know that if your kid did some of the things that you did, you'd be laughing at them too. You'd be like, that's the dumbest thing you ever did right there. That's stupid. See, guys, we got to learn, if we're going to learn patience, we got to learn to look at the bigger thing. We got to learn to have a little sense of humor. That slows down the process. That slows things down when you learn to laugh at some of the things that happen. I tell you, one of the things I've learned that God gives us the children as an interruptions, but I've learned laughing at them makes me tolerate that interruption. I like to laugh at my kids. They don't think it's funny, but I like laughing at them. Some of the things they do crack me up. They aggravate me, They irritate me, but then later I'm like, I can't believe they did that. That was so funny. You know, the third thing we got to do is deepen your love. You got to deepen your love. You know, I think that one of the reasons why we're so patient with our children is because of our love for our children. They irritate us, but we're patient with them because we love them so much. Out of all the people that you're patient with, you're probably more patient with your children than anybody else in the world. Why? Because they're the ones you love the most than anyone else in the world. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, it says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. Isn't it funny? He starts out with the hardest thing. It is patient. Love is patient. I'm going to wait on you. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to not beat you up. I'm not going to make things hard on you. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. The LB version says, be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Be patient with each other. The more you love somebody, the more patient you're going to become with them. The more patient you are with the situation because of your love for them. And then the last thing, we got to depend on Jesus' power. We got to depend on Jesus' power. If you look at Colossians 1, verse 11, he says, being strengthened with all power according to his glory, might so that you may have great endurance and patience. Thank you. Had me worried there for a minute. The NEB says, may he strengthen you in his glorious might with ample power to meet whatever comes with fortune, patience, and joy. See, if we depend on Jesus' power to give us patience, that's why that people will say, Lord, give me patience. Give me patience. Now, you got to be careful when you say that, because we already talked about how God does his part to help you develop patience. So I always tell people, don't pray for patience globally. Pray for patience for somebody, for a particular situation, because when you pay for it globally, all of a sudden he puts things in there to help teach you. Interruptions, inconveniences, limitations, inactivity. He gives us these things to start helping to teach us patience. So if you want patience for something, ask for patience for that thing. But know that he'll also use those things in giving you patience in that. But we got to learn to depend on Jesus' love. We got to learn to depend on his power. There are some people that God has put in my path that I feel very confident that he put here for no other reason than to build and to strengthen my patience. Because that's the only good I get out of that relationship, is that I'm learning patience with dealing with them. In 2 Peter 3:15, he says, bear in mind that our Lord's patience means salvation, just as our dear brother Paul also wrote you with wisdom that God gave him. Bear in mind that our Lord's patience means salvation, meaning he was patient with us. His patience was waiting till the time that it was time for Christ to come and die on the cross for us. It was his patience that led to us him being tolerant for us to even be here today. It's his patience of waiting to come until everybody has the opportunity to be saved. And he says, look, lean on that. Lean on that patience. Grab that patience. Understand that patience. Grab the power. The same power that God has to wait, he's giving you. And you have to rely on him for that. You got to ask him to guide you through that time. Do you know that patience is a test of your faith? Noah took 120 years to build a boat. I complain sometimes that it's taken me over 3 years to build a church. 120 years it took him to build a boat. A man that never seen rain. A man that never seen a boat. A man that never knew what it meant to float on the water. The first sea captain didn't take a class. Trial and error. Waited on God. Listened to God. Abraham took him 90 years to have a son. And you remember what God told him to do to that son? Moses took him 40 years to see the promised land. But Moses sadly never saw the promised land. Or never stepped foot in the promised land. But it took him 40 years just to see it. So whatever it is that God's working through you, whatever it is that God's trying to help you through, isn't it worth it? When you know that God has done these things, that God can do these things. So this message, like I said, was just as much for me as it was for you. But I know that each and every one of us have got some kind of struggle that we're going through today. If you're here on earth, you've got a struggle that you're going through today. Whether it's the person you yelled at this morning because they weren't ready when they needed to be. Maybe it's the husband that didn't do things the way you wanted him to yesterday, or the wife, or the friend, or the neighbor. Or maybe it's waiting for God to answer a prayer that you've asked him for, and you think, oh, well, he's not listening. He doesn't care. Maybe it's going to be tomorrow, and it's going to be somebody that says something that just rubs you wrong, and you just want to lash out to them. And you're like, I ain't got the power not to kill you. And it's like, God, please help me. Maybe it's a health problem that you've been dealing with, and you're like, I don't know what else to do. I'm losing sight. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, God's using that. Whatever it is that you caused a problem for, God's going to use that. The problem that we run into is we get tired of waiting on God. And we decide we're going to do it on our own. We're going to decide we're going to make these things happen. And I can tell you, it's kind of like baking cookies. Anybody here like cookies? Have you ever noticed that if you cook cookies, you have to cook them in a certain temperature at a certain time? If you don't want to wait for those cookies to be done, you increase the temperature, right? Yeah, you increase the temperature. Why? Because the hotter the temperature, the quicker they cook, the faster you'll have the cookies. But what happens when you pull the cookies out? They're burnt. Or the outside's burnt and the inside's raw. There's something wrong with it. Maybe I should have used chicken because somebody was like, ooh, I like it raw in the middle. So chicken, whatever. You have to cook it at the right temperature, and you have to wait till the right time. Otherwise, it never comes out right, no matter what you do. You open the recipe book, and the recipe book says $3.75 for 20 minutes. I don't know what it says, so somebody please don't say, I'm not going to that church ever again because he doesn't know what he told us a false thing that it's actually this temperature for this minute. I don't know what it really is. I'm making it up. But $3.75 for 20 minutes is what I'm making up. And you put those cookies in there at $3.75 for 20 minutes. Then if you're like me, you go every 5 minutes and open the door to see if they're cooking. Because I don't trust the fact that I set the stove, that stove's going to do what it's supposed to do, and it's going to cook it. And then when the thing goes off at 20 minutes, you pull it out, and guess what? The cookies are what? Perfect. I didn't say open the door. I have a light. All right. I ain't opening the door. You open it at 20 minutes, the thing goes up, you open it up, the cookies are perfect, right? They're exactly the way you wanted them. But if I'm like, look, I got 10 minutes and I want some cookies, and I'm going to cook it at 425 for 10 minutes, they're not going to be right. They're not going to be right. You follow the recipe the way it was written 2,000 million years ago for the person that first decided to make cookies. That recipe has not changed. The temperature has stayed the same. The time has stayed the same. No matter how the stove has changed, the recipe. If you find a recipe book from 1950 and you look at chocolate chip cookies, the temperature and the time is still the same as if you find a cookbook today in 2020. It'll still say the same temperature and the same amount of time, will it not? But the stove has changed. But the cookie has not changed. The recipe did not change. See, guys, that's the way the Bible is. The world may have changed, the stove, but the instruction manual of the Bible has not changed. And if you go there and you read and see how God wants you to deal with the circumstances, how He wants you to deal with patience and things you're going through, you will find that when it gets part of the world, it still processes the same. It still ends up the same. But if you try to speed up the process, you're going to end up with the same problem as you do with the cookies. And see, that's where patience comes in. That's where we got to learn to wait and listen to God, follow the recipe of life that God has outlined for us. Quit trying to speed up the process. Quit trying to slow up the process. You'll burn the cookies. And there's nothing wrong. As Yosemite Sam used to say, my biscuits are burning. There ain't nothing wrong than burnt biscuits. Nothing worse than burnt biscuits. We got to learn. We got to be a society that learns to wait and be patient and do the way God told us to do, not the way man tells us to do it. You want burnt cookies? Keep doing it the way we're doing it. But don't do like my kids and complain that the cookies are burnt. You burnt them. You burnt them. 375, 20 minutes, perfect cookies. 375, 25 minutes, burnt cookies. 375, 15 minutes, raw cookies. This is the time. God's time is just like the cookies. Put it on the right heat, the right amount of time, perfect results. You got to be patient and you got to trust. So we're going to stand. Sheila's going to dim the lights and she's going to come up. I know I'm not the only one that's had to deal with patience. I know I'm not the only one that struggles with patience. I know I'm not the only one that this week alone have had struggles with patience. But I also know that the answer is to talk to God about it and say, hey, what did you teach me? Or what were you trying to teach me? What do I get out of this? How can I learn from this? How can I be better at developing patience through all this? What do I need to do? Maybe you've blamed God for a situation that was your own fault because you didn't want to wait and you messed up. And you need to talk to God about it and say, hey, look, I messed up. I tried to make the cookies ready before it was time. I messed this up and I blamed you, and I want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for blaming you for my mistake. I'm sorry for blaming you for what I did wrong. This is your time to come talk to him about it and say, hey, you know what? You put this in front of me. You're trying to help me. You're trying to mold me. You're trying to teach me. You're trying to make me a better man, a better husband, a better father. You're trying to make me a better wife, a better woman, a better mother, a better friend. And I just keep messing it up. And I need to rely on you, and I need you to help me. I need you to teach me and make me understand what it is you're trying to show me, what lesson you have for me today. And teach me to be patient as I go through this journey, as I go through this trial, as I go through this lesson. Let me be patient so that I can pass the test. I'm encouraging you while this song is being sung to search your heart and ask yourself, you know what, I struggle with this and I want to fix it. And I encourage you to come and talk to God and share with Him where you're at. And ask Him for His strength. As the Bible said that we got to rely on God's power. We got to rely on Him. And so this is your time to ask Him, hey, will you come to me? Will you give me strength? Because I swear, God, I don't think I'm going to kill him. I think Monday morning I'm going to show up and this person's going to rub me wrong one more time and I'm just going to kill him. Or I'm not showing them love and I'm not reflecting you because my patience is gone. I'm not being the example that I need to be. And today, I want to fix that, and I want to acknowledge you, and I want you to come and help me. While she's singing, will you consider that? Will you consider that prayer and come and talk to God about it?